All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. It's 11 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. This session will be recorded, so in case you want to take a look at anything that we've discussed, you're welcome to check out the members-only section of the website. It'll be posted in a day or two, I think. So anyway, thank you all again for joining us. We're thrilled to see so much interest in Women in Bio's Boardroom Ready program. I am Carolyn Brome. I'm an attorney. I used to be in the medical device and life sciences space, and have recently joined Mars, the candy company that makes M&Ms and Skittles and Snickers. So I work for them now, but I still am deeply dedicated to supporting healthcare. I am the founder of Women in Bio's Boardroom Ready program. This is sort of my passion project, my nights and weekends, I like to call it. So really excited to share with you more about the Boardroom Ready program. I'd like to introduce my co-speaker today, Christine. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. So I'm Christine. I'm a partner with the Stevenson Group. We're an executive search firm. We specialize in life sciences and do work from VP level through to the board level across all functions. And so I'm happy to be here today to share some perspective on things that our clients look for when they're seeking board members.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. So if you have any questions during our session today, I would ask that you would use the chat feature to email or to text Tamara Kilgore. She's our program manager for YWIB and EWIB. You can also just send your email messages to boardroomready@womeninbio.org. So Tamara will be collecting all the questions and sort of moderate those questions at the end. We'll try to leave some time to answer any of your questions. So to provide a little bit of a roadmap of what we're hoping to cover today, a lot of you are here because you are either interested in Boardroom Ready or you have questions about, the nitty-gritty, what's involved in it, and what the application process is like, and how boards work. So we're going to sort of cover all of that meaty topic in 1 hour. So I'm going to start again by getting into sort of the nitty-gritty of Women in Bio's Boardroom Ready program, and then we'll get into the application and selection process. And then Chris and I will have a conversation about finding board roles and what boards are generally looking for. So to go ahead and give you some context about and history about Boardroom Ready, we want corporate boardrooms to reflect the diverse world we live in. We want to make sure that every voice has a seat at the table. Although the primary target of Boardroom Ready is to increase female representation, I want to make it abundantly clear that we advocate for all diverse voices in the boardroom. And in fact, one of our outreach efforts this year will be to especially increase the voice of underrepresented women in the boardroom. So Boardroom Ready was created in 2016 to address the gender parity gap seen in the life sciences boardrooms. Although women make up 50% of life science management, they only have 15% of board roles. So the business case for gender diverse boards is compelling. You can look at McKinsey, you can look at Catalyst, Women on Board 2020. It is clear that diverse boards perform better by almost every metric. So because the case for a rich, diverse board is so compelling, we were confused why women have not really increased the number, their role in the boardroom in decades. So we took a deep look at why women weren't getting into the boardroom and looked at how board roles were filled. And we figured out that we think the major disparity here is how board roles are filled. So the talent pool of board directors is primarily consistent of existing board members. So that's going to inherently exclude the majority of women that are in the C-suite. It has been a bit of a catch-22. You couldn't be a director if you didn't have director experience, but it was very hard for women to get that first-time director role. We found that once women do have their first board role, they often get approached all the time for other board roles, and they quickly can become overboarded and not be able to participate in any more board roles. So we wanted to create a community of C-suite executives who were interested in board service, had all the skills and experiences needed to be a board director today, and create a platform for them to accelerate their path to the boardroom. Boardroom Ready was inspired by a program offered internally at Biogen called Raising the Bar. Biogen had identified some top talented SVPs and above and put them through a corporate board governance program and supported their efforts to join boards, such that when Biogen would acquire a board role, they had a talented pipeline of their executive female talent that they could sort of plug into those board roles. They ended up sunsetting their program to allow women in bio to sort of take over raising the bar. And so they have been a close partner with us. And I also want to mention that Boardroom Ready would not have been possible without our founding sponsor, LifeSci Advisors' generous funding. So because of all these fantastic sponsors, we were able to put together a comprehensive platform to enable women to claim their seat at the table. Boardroom Ready has a few major pillars. First of all, there is a classroom component. We have a 5-day corporate board governance that is taught half of the time at George Washington University in DC, and the other half of it is applied learnings with people that are really in the field. And this covers topics relevant for life science board directors. It includes everything from cybersecurity to legal liability to dealing with activist shareholders, dealing with corporate relations issues, you name it, the audit committee. We really get into the weeds on what life science board directors go through. And these classroom components are meant to be very engaging. So it's expected that everyone in the Boardroom Ready program will contribute equally during the classroom. And that really helps, I think, foster really robust conversations, because people can say, well, actually, when we had this happen at our company, here's what our management team did. And people can share experiences across the industry and really learn how other companies' board of directors have handled issues that face life science company boards. In addition, Boardroom Ready has an annual retreat where we bring in all of the prior alumna who have graduated and do a 1-day sort of celebration and continued learning. This has been really important because we want to make sure that each Boardroom Ready class is able to meet with the other alumna who have graduated and really just continue to build their network. Everyone in the Boardroom Ready program receives a seasoned board member as a mentor. So we pair up experienced directors and the women in the Boardroom Ready program, and these mentors can sort of serve as for a couple reasons. One, it's great to just have an additional sounding board, to have an additional mentor who knows about you that you could ask questions about as you are finding your role to the boardroom. And another thing is we try to match mentors with similar backgrounds as the mentees, so that if the mentor is approached about board roles where they may have a conflict or be overboarded, they then can even recommend their mentee for it because they'll have similar background. So the mentor component is a really important part of the Boardroom Ready platform. We also hire a professional board resume writer who works with each of the graduates to prepare a board resume. Some people haven't looked at their resumes in a while when they apply for Boardroom Ready, and the resume that you would have for a board role is very different from the board resume, or for the resume you would have if you were seeking an operational role. And so we have a person that works closely with each of the graduates to help prepare their board resume. And in addition, WIB actively seeks to help with board appointments. I would say once or twice a week, I send out an email to all of the alumna about all the available board appointments we know of. And so the women can figure out if they might be a good candidate for it, send their email back to me, and then I can work with either the recruiter or the chairman or woman of the board and help make connections so that women can have a chance to get board roles that they might not otherwise hear about. Lastly, one of the things that we've done in recent years is we've created an executive profiles directory, which is online, which has the biographies of all of our Boardroom Ready alumna. This binder full of women, if you will, really shuts down the comment from boards that say, well, we can't find qualified women. We now have this directory as a resource, which is like pre-vetted all Boardroom Ready alumna that are ready, willing, and able to serve on boards. And we pass this out to hundreds of industry leaders and recruiters a year so that they have really good, close access to Boardroom Ready graduates. And that's been tremendously helpful in helping our graduates find board roles. So as I mentioned, the program has been around since 2016. Each year we have 20 women in our cohort. And so since 2016, I'm pleased to say we've actually had 67 corporate board appointments for those 100 women. So we are thrilled that most of them have gone on to find corporate board roles since participating in Boardroom Ready. And it's been just absolutely incredible to see some women get, 2, 3, 4 board roles, and some have now retired and do board roles full time. So it's been really incredible that the success that the Boardroom Ready program has had for these women and the connections they've been able to make. And one of the reasons we think Boardroom Ready has been successful, in addition to some of the reasons I mentioned before, is that we have built a community and a sisterhood where women are helping women. And so as you go through this very intimate, intense year program with 19 other women, you get to know them very well. You know their backgrounds, you know how they think, you know their strategy, you know personalities. And so when women look at their own boards, their corporate boards, and they know that a position's becoming available, they can think of who might be a good fit for their board and actually help make those connections and pound the table for one another. And so we've had time after time after time where women from Boardroom Ready have recommended other women from the program to participate on, to be directors on their boards, or if a woman is a conflicted out of a board she's interviewing for, or is overboarded, she's able to actually recommend someone else who's gone through the program. And so it's really become this really great support network. And it's, everything I love about Boardroom Ready. It's just women helping women and helping people get a seat at the table. So that's sort of been our impact and our success to date. We have a long way to go. We really want to increase the number of underrepresented women that participate in Boardroom Ready and really increase diversity in the boardroom in that respect as well. But we're very pleased with the success we've had, but we know there's still a lot of work to go. And, I would love if there were gender parity on boards in 10 years and we didn't need Boardroom Ready. Of course, that's the dream, is that we eventually don't need this program because there's so many women on corporate boards. That's my dream. I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about the time commitment and what's expected if you were to make it into Boardroom Ready. So as I mentioned, there's 5 days of this corporate governance training. It takes place 3 days in September and 2.5 days in November. And so the dates for that are on the Boardroom Ready application and on our website, but you must attend both of those in person and be fully present. So this is not like your freshman year of college where you can just show up in pajama pants and sort of phone it in. We really expect that when you attend both sessions that you will be there, you will be engaged. The September session is in Washington, D.C. The November session this year is in San Francisco, California. We do rotate that different coasts every year. I will say that Boardroom Ready is very much you get what you put in, right? So you need to be there. You need to try to make yourself available for the networking and the happy hours and the local events that happens in cities. And I really do think, the people that have gotten the most out of Boardroom Ready have also been the people who have put themselves out there and really made themselves available to enjoy the experience. So if you know you're going to be going through a merger, or that it's a really busy year, personally, you've got a kid going to college, or if there's some reason why you feel like you would not be able to fully participate, I would encourage you to wait another year until you feel like you have the time to devote to it. But there is only those 5 days of in-person sessions that you technically have to be present at. The expectation is that if you are applying for Boardroom Ready and you get in, that you are interested in serving on a corporate board and you are looking for board roles. This is, of course, the honor system, but I mention it because, we're only allowed to, have about 20 people a year participate. So we really don't want anyone in the program if they're not actually interested in finding a board role. We want to make sure that the people in the program are actively finding actively trying to find a board role. We know it takes a while for some people it happens right away. But I just mentioned that we do, this program is for people looking for board roles now, not somebody who's thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll do a board role in 10 years. We really want people looking now so we can have a greater impact in the community now. As I mentioned earlier, this program is really for women who want to rise up and also reach back. We are a sisterhood, we are a community. We are not interested in drama, competition, gamesmanship. That is not the WIB way. That is not who Boardroom Ready women are. So, if you are someone that likes to support other women and collaborate with other women and work as a team, Boardroom Ready, it would be a great fit for you. We also expect that people who go through the program will give back in some way, either financially after they've had some sort of acquisition or get a board role, or by volunteering their time, by acting as a mentor to others in future years, by attending events, helping to find speakers in some way. We don't really want people that are gonna, take up a lot of resources in the Boardroom Ready program and then never do anything with WIB again and be MIA. So I mentioned that too, that we really are looking for long-term partners, and the Boardroom Ready community is a huge investment for both WIB and for the participants. So we want to make sure that it's not just a one and done. We want to have some continuity and have people continue to be a part of our family. We're really hoping to grow diversity and inclusion efforts this year for underrepresented women. And so anyone participating, this should go without saying, but anyone participating in Boardroom Ready needs to be on board with our D&I efforts. So we want to make sure that we have a very inclusive community and welcome all creeds, all religions, all races, all LGBTQ, anyone. We want to make sure those voices are respected and welcomed. And I want to set some expectations too about the Boardroom Ready program. Of course, it's been very successful, but Women in Bio does not guarantee corporate board service. When you graduate from Boardroom Ready, we do not say, and here is your board role. I liken us to like a really fancy recruiter or a cheerleader that's going to, we're going to do our best to prepare you for the corporate boardroom. We're going to help you with finding a network. We're going to help find available board roles. We're going to pair you with a mentor. We're going to do everything possible to make sure that you are successful. But at the end of the day, you have to be committed to it, and you have to, nail your interviews, and it has to be a good fit for you. Some board role, some people get approached for board roles the month the press release comes out about the new Boardroom Ready class. It literally has happened before that someone saw the press release about the Boardroom Ready class, thought, oh my gosh, this woman's fantastic. I can't believe she's out on a board. Called her, and by the time she actually had the in-person session in September, she was already interviewing for that board. So sometimes it happens very quickly, but other times it's taken people 2 years to find a board role. So I want to make sure that people who are in the Boardroom Ready program have realistic expectations that, again, WIB is a volunteer nonprofit organization. We're going to do everything we can to help you succeed, but there's no guarantee that you're going to walk away from this serving on a Fortune 100 size board. In fact, we think that's unlikely. But of course, we're going to do everything we can to support you and your efforts. Okay, I know I'm talking a mile a minute. Sorry, just a few more details to go through. So the cost, we get asked about that sometimes. The investment to be in the Boardroom Ready program is $5,750. That includes the classroom component, most of the meals while you're in all the in-person events. It includes the resume writer, it includes the mentor, it includes all of our staff time. Just so you know that cost does not cover our cost to run the program. We are only able to provide it for $5,750 because of the tremendous corporate sponsors that we have. So just keep in mind, like, that cost is really quite reasonable when consider all of the costs that we have to run the program. It does not include your transportation costs, your hotel rooms, your cab rides, etc., to attend the in-person events. So you should expect to, be able to cover those on your own and make those arrangements on your own. And just one last note, like, we have priced this out at other schools, and our price is typically a third of what it would cost to go through one of the other reputable board governance programs. But we feel that ours has a whole lot more value to it because it is industry focused, it is specific to life sciences women. We think our network is better. We provide a resume writer, and we've had, in some cases 10x the impact and results in board placement that some of the other board governance programs are offered through, the Harvards and the Stanfords of the world. Want to make sure people, I think I've been pretty clear, but want to make sure, like, Boardroom Ready is for people that are ready for corporate board service now. This is not a training program. This is not a feeder program. This is not a pipeline for people who are curious about what a board member does. The people that get admitted to Boardroom Ready are actually ready for board service now, and they're people that we would feel comfortable in going to chairmen and women of boards and saying this person would be a great fit for your board. So there are a ton of WIB programs that are pipeline and feeder and will help women at every stage on the arc of her career. Boardroom Ready is really at the top for people that are ready for corporate board service now. So if you are not quite ready for board service, but you would like to do board service in the future, I would encourage you to get involved in our MAPS and our EMAPS programs, our Executive Women in Bio events and local chapters, and just participate generally in all of the great events that Women in Bio hosts, both nationally and locally in our 14 chapter cities. All right, getting on to the most asked questions I get regarding our selection and application process. So we know executives are busy, and we intentionally have designed our application and selection process to be as painless and streamlined as possible. So we have a very short application that has a few fields that you would have to fill in about, a time that you showed leadership ability, why you want to participate in Boardroom Ready, and what sort of boards you're looking for. I expect it will take less than an hour to complete. It's very straightforward. We have posted, I believe, the application this morning on WIB's website. Applications must be received by March 15th at midnight Pacific Standard Time. And I will say this, and I know it's on the application, but late applications will not be accepted. We know things happen, so I would encourage you to get your application in sooner than later. Every year we have people who want to apply 1 day to 1 month after the application window closes, and unfortunately, it's a slippery slope, so every application must be in by the 15th. I would encourage you to apply early, just so that you don't forget about it and don't miss the window. Unfortunately, that happens every year where people just, things get busy at work and they forget to apply by the last date. We receive more applications than we have room for. Unfortunately or fortunately, the program is popular. We typically receive at least 80 applications, and we have limited our class size every year to around 20. We find that 20 is the perfect number to allow really cohesive group dynamics, to allow everyone to participate in the classroom components and to really get to know each other well. Plus, WIB is limited resources. So if we were to have 50 women go through the program, we would need, we would need 5 people on staff to help find board roles for them. So, at this point in time, we're only allowing approximately 20 women a year. I will say this year we had 21 women in the program because we just had 21 so exceptional women. We couldn't cut it off at 20. So, occasionally it will be slightly higher than 20, but we really, it is a competitive program. And it's always difficult because you are competing with 80 or 100, other executives who are very talented as well. So if you don't make it in, don't take it personally. It just means that there were 20 people that were scored higher during the selection process. So I know it's always really touchy, and I really wish we could have unlimited seats in the program, but that's just not a part of Boardroom Ready, and we have to keep it small and selective to have the impact that we're having. I forgot to mention on the application section, there is a references section where you are to list 2 references that can speak to your ability to serve on a board. It could be a chairwoman or chairman of your board. It could be your CEO, or it could be a board member you've used to work with. It could be a direct report that can speak to your ability to serve on a board. we have a number of stage gate processes during the selection committee process, and references are one of the last things that are called for the women that are that have sort of made it through all the stage gates. So if your references are not called, it could be just we haven't gotten to that part yet of your application, or it could be that you know other people were stronger candidates, and so we will not call your reference if you're not one of the top, you know, the last stage of women that we're vetting. So don't worry, the references do not need to send a letter of support. They don't need to send anything. We just need the references, name, email, and phone number, and we will contact them in the event that you sort of make it to the last stage of the selection process. You also must be a WIB member to apply for Women in Bio's Boardroom Ready program. I do want to mention that it's on the application. And there is a new section this year I want to highlight on the application. As many of you may have seen, California recently signed new legislation that boards, in addition to having a certain number of women on them, must have a certain number of underrepresented communities on them. It's defined in the statute as women who self-identify as, you know, a number of different races and LGBTQ. There is a question. We are using it as a way to keep track of how we're doing on recruiting underrepresented communities for Boardroom Ready, but it is completely optional. It says on the application it's optional, so I just wanted to flag that in case anyone had questions. It's new on our application this year, completely optional to complete, but if you feel comfortable, we would love to know that so that we can do our best to improve our D&I outreach this year. When you have completed your application, you will send that plus your biography and your CV or your resume by March 15th to the Boardroom Ready at womeninbio.org email address. Within a business day of sending it, you will receive confirmation that we've gotten it. So if you were to have sent it and we didn't send you a response within a day, please let us know. But there may be a slight delay on that, but we will make sure that we respond that we've received your application, and if something didn't go through correctly, we'll be in touch. But it's important that all of that is received by March 15th. And applicants will be notified on or before July 1st regarding whether they have been accepted into the Boardroom Ready program. So everyone will hear by July 1st. So some people would like to know a little bit more. Some people feel like it's a little bit of a black box on how our selection committee picks who's gonna get those 20 spots. I will say I am not a member of our selection committee. I have left it to the experts. We have 6 people on our selection committee, all of whom are experts in board service. We have several CEOs who serve on multiple boards. We have other board members who are nom and gov board members at boards around the country. We have a life sciences board recruiter who exclusively interviews for board role, you know, helps recruit for board roles. And we also have an HR expert who helps senior talent find board roles. So all of our selection committee is extremely well versed in what corporate boards are looking for in the United States and what boards want. And of course, like each of them will have their own lens, but it's been pretty surprising that, you know, 99% of the time, our 6-man board actually reaches consensus on which 20 women to accept into the program. So they've now been doing this for a number of years. They work very closely together to help sort of pick what they consider to be the top 20 applications. Of course, the selection committee has a very difficult task of narrowing down the applications to find the strongest applicants. We have 3 members of our selection committee review each resume and application. We balance the scores, we weight it. There's some statistical analysis involved to make sure that it's fair, but you know, everything is reviewed by at least, every application is reviewed by at least 3 members of our selection committee. As I mentioned, we go through phases and stage gates, and towards the end is when we would contact the references and do interviews with the applicants. Sometimes I will say that we haven't contacted the references if someone on the selection committee knows the woman really well or serves on a board. That has happened before, so don't be totally alarmed if your references aren't contacted. If someone knows you really well, they can sort of speak on your behalf. But we typically do reference checks just to make sure. I just mentioned that it's happened a few times, so we don't want you to think that that we didn't go through that process. So the selection committee is looking for women that can serve on corporate boards right now. It's not a training program, so who's ready right now, who has the requisite experience and backgrounds to make them attractive for a variety of boards. And then also who would be a good match for the program, i.e. they have the expectations aligned with the program, they're collaborative, they have the full support of their references. And in a minute, Chris and I will get into some more nitty-gritty about nitty-gritty about what boards are looking for. But I wanted to share some examples of people who probably wouldn't be a good fit for Boardroom Ready. So we've had people apply before who are not at all familiar with the boardroom or what the direct.
Oh, Carolyn, I think you froze.
Hello?
There you are.
Oh, sorry about that. Don't know what's happening. Another example of someone who probably wouldn't be a good candidate is someone who lives in a very remote part of the world, like Siberia, who's unable to travel for board work. Another example would be someone who's conflicted out of every board role they would be a good fit for, or maybe a CEO says that they wouldn't support them finding a board role. That wouldn't be a good fit because we obviously want people to be able to look for board roles. We've also had times where references have said the candidates were toxic and that they would never recommend them for a board role. So I would say make sure your references really support you and support your candidacy for the program. And then also, somebody who has a very niche experience and skill set that doesn't translate well, or doesn't really have the demand to serve on a board role. I just want to say too, make sure if you don't get into the Boardroom Ready program, I'm sure it is tremendously disappointing. Unfortunately, we aren't able to give specific feedback for people not accepted into the program. We simply don't have the time and the bandwidth to provide personal feedback for, the 60 to 80 women who will not make it into the program. And also the selection process is confidential. So we wouldn't feel comfortable saying, well, your reference, your references said, you're not well liked, you can't lead, and you wouldn't be good for a board role. I will say if you don't get in, we really encourage you to take advantage of other Women in Bio programs. So we have executive Women in Bio, we have executive MAPS, we have MAPS for mentoring, we have a whole slate of women of programs that can that I'd encourage you to take advantage of. And lastly, just to keep in mind, I know you'll be disappointed if you don't get into Boardroom Ready, but don't let that stop you from looking for board roles. Plenty of people get director roles without Boardroom Ready. So it is just one data point. It just means you weren't a good fit for our program, but if you're interested in board service, continue on that path, and we wish you great success, and we hope that you find a board role. So anyway, I realize I've been talking a lot, talking a mile a minute. So now I want to bring in Chris to talk about the $1 million question we get all the time, which is how to get on boards, and what are boards really looking for. So Chris, I'll hand it over to you, and would love to hear a little bit more about your background and also how our corporate board roles filled.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the great overview of the program. Hopefully it answered a lot of questions for everyone. So our firm, we do board searches for both public and private companies, and they do vary what they're looking for. And there's sort of two ways that board searches get done, either through the network of the existing board and executives of that company. We don't recommend that. We find that's not really promoting diversity at the board level. Or through using a firm like ours. And so we will go in and do a board assessment to understand what the board looks like today, where are the gaps, what's the opportunity, so that we can be very clear in what we're looking for and always pushing diversity as well.
Thanks. And what percentage of board roles are filled by a recruiter versus through the backdoor?
Yeah,
method?
I think public companies tend to use search firms more, which is a great thing. I think some of the private companies where the current board composition is the investors, they tend to use their network and it's a little insular, but we are seeing a shift there. I mean, we do a lot of private company board work. So thankfully we are seeing the move more towards vetting the full market rather than just their Rolodex.
Gotcha. And so what does the executive recruiter, like what role does the executive recruiter play? Are you advocating on behalf of candidates? Are you just representing the company? Like, how does this all work?
Yeah, well, we get paid by the client. However, it has to be a good fit for everyone involved. So while they are ultimately paying our bill and they're our client, you know, we're representing you as well. And we're going to let you know all the good, the bad, and the ugly about the opportunity. We're your sounding board. So please talk to us, concerns that you have, information you need, due diligence. That's our job in this. It's got to be a good fit for both sides.
Thanks, Chris. And so, okay, company calls you and says, Chris, we've got someone rolling off our board. We'd like to add a new member. What do you do?
Yep. So we go in and we'll meet with the existing board and really understand what are the dynamics. And so what are they trying to fill? Do they need someone for the audit committee? Are they an early stage company and so they need somebody with clinical experience to help them advance their program? Are they getting ready to IPO? Lots of different factors, and we'll do that full analysis and then come up with what our scorecard looks like. So what are the must-haves for this person? And then of course, we go to the Women in Bio directory and see who's a fit.
Awesome. Love you, Chris. So I think there's a lot of questions about, you know, what are boards looking for? And I know there's no prescription, right? And every board is going to look for something different, but can you give us a little bit more guidelines that, you know, in your, you know, decades of experience, what is the typical board, like what is the typical phenotype about a board member? What are they going to ask you for every time?
Yeah, so they always want the press release hire, and we define that as a lot of different things, right? So they want somebody that is going to attract attention when they say that they've just appointed them to their board. And that could mean because you've come from a successful company, you've lived through an IPO, you've launched a first to market product, you've worked for some really compelling CEOs and board members in the past, you've had an acquisition. So I think it's really someone that's going to bring experience to the table, give the company credibility, give them guidance, and be a strategic thought partner.
What are the backgrounds that they're typically looking for?
Yeah, so I would say most of the time there's a handful of criteria that's for every board, right? And they want somebody who's had P&L experience, someone who understands the board dynamic. So you don't have to have sat on a board. Obviously, everybody has to be a first-time board member at some point, but having that experience of preparing documents for a board, presenting to the board, just knowing how those dynamics work is important. Having the operating experience. So you don't have to be a CEO, but what we do tend to look for is someone who's either in the C-suite or is a direct report to the CEO and sort of the head of their function, whether that's clinical development, finance, or the commercial function.
Yeah, and so does title matter then?
So I think title is always important, and it's something that hopefully you can negotiate when you join any organization or when you're looking for a promotion. And that's probably a whole separate training topic, but you know, I think for us, it's really having sort of the top position within your function. So you could be an SVP and not a C-suite, but if you're reporting to the CEO, that's just as relevant.
And you mentioned, you know, they want external credibility, right? Which I would think is harder for a first-time board member, perhaps, who doesn't have a flashy name in the boardroom. But you mentioned that you could have, you know, you could be a sexy company, work on, you know, a fun, big launch of a product. Like there are other ways where you could have more splash or more impact with your name. How do you convey that you have you know, I'm sure relationships are part of it too. How does an applicant convey that, yeah, they're tight with some of the hobnobbing with some of the top, you know, well-known board directors or Wall Street investors or venture?
Yep. So when we look at a background, before we even call someone, we're looking at who else is part of the senior management team at that company and who is on the board. And, you know, obviously, if these are people who are well-known names and they've selected you to come work at their company, that has a lot of weight to it. I think also one of the things that I always tell people to do is really expanding their resume to talk about events that happened at their company while they were there. Even if you are the chief medical officer and you've raised $50 million as a company, you might step back and say, well, I wasn't the CEO, I wasn't the CFO, but you surely presented that clinical data to investors to help raise that money. And so it's really taking credit for things that you did participate in and showing your broad remit and the influence that you've had in the success of the company in general.
Thanks, Chris. And sorry, I don't know what is going on, but my internet is acting up. I think they're doing work outside. So Chris, can you talk to me about what sort of business operations or experiences might be helpful?
Yeah. So I think some of this is helping to advance a company. So, you know, whenever you're working on your resume, your bio, you want to make sure there's impactful things that you've accomplished. And you might have, as we talked about a little earlier, secured a partnership, done financing, presented at conferences. So you have that external credentials and you're visible in the marketplace. And I think internally, it's having the P&L experience, it's leading a team, it's scaling a business.
Does diversity matter?
Yes, yes. It does.
I mean, I know I know gender parity has been talked about for a while. Has things changed with the Black Lives Matter movement and legislation?
It has. I think, you know, we're doing a search right now where our client said to us, do not show us any white men, which I loved hearing. And so, but they also want diversity of race and their LGBTQ community. And it's really important that we push that. And this is coming from clients that aren't in California where it's mandated by law. This is just companies doing the right thing and recognizing that they have to have diversity. And it internally for us, it's a really important metric that we actually track on every assignment we work on, whether it's a board role or a VP of R&D. So we take this very seriously.
Thanks, Chris. And I meant to ask this earlier, but what, so we talked about business operation experience, you know, where you are in the rank, who you report to, your experience in the boardroom. I mean, everyone knows audit committee chairs, you know, finding a woman audit committee chair is like, you know, finding a needle in a haystack. Finding someone with cybersecurity experts, like, I mean, that's so hot right now. What else are the hot backgrounds that boards are really trying to get?
Yeah, I think.
Is it regulatory? Is it HR? Is it commercial, BD?
Yeah, I think some of it depends on the stage of the company, right? So what I would say, you know, you mentioned regulatory. I think people who are in very siloed roles, who are experts like regulatory, quality, even HR to an extent, I think those folks make amazing advisors and consultants to a business, but I do think they struggle to get a board seat. I think a company that's on the verge of product commercialization may look more towards a COO, a CCO type person, a head of sales and marketing, a company that's preclinical, maybe looking for someone with clinical experience or fundraising experience. So a lot of it does depend on the stage of the company, but I also think, you know, everyone's looking for the breadth of experience, the credibility to be in front of investors, whether it's Wall Street or a venture capitalist.
Thanks, Chris. And I saw something come through. I've not been able to read the comments, but I saw something about legal, which of course, perks my mind because I'm an attorney. Can you talk about, for the general counsels on the call?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hot topic. And we've actually had GCs go through this program. And I think some of them are really amazing and they've secured board seats and they've done a great job. I think there's a place for those folks, right? Because they report to the board and they understand how to protect the company from a lot of different aspects. And a lot of times IT, cybersecurity, and those things report into them. So I think they have a really strong background. The advice I would give them is be very careful about the company, because if it's a very early stage company that may not have their own GC and legal department, you don't want to become that for them, right? You're not a full-time operating executive, you're a board member. So it's just balancing the value add you can bring versus giving your time away, as a board member and them abusing you.
Okay, thanks. Is there anything else you can think of? I mean, what about someone who steps out of the workplace for a long time, or someone who only does consulting, or someone who's retired? Any advice for those?
Yeah, I think consultants are always really intelligent, very strategic individuals. But I think if you don't have the operating experience, it's a difficult sell to get onto a board because you haven't sat in their seat. You've come in, you've advised, but you've gone home. So I think if you're missing the operating experience, it's going to be more of a challenge. I think if you're retired, we actually look at that profile a lot for our early stage clients because they need somebody who's accessible, maybe one day a week. And somebody in a full-time operating role isn't going to be able to make that commitment. So I think those folks, as long as they have all the other relevant experience in the background, can be very compelling for an early stage company.
Thanks so much, Chris. Is there anything you wanted to add that I haven't asked you?
No, I hope gave a good picture of some of the things that we look for and how to position yourself. And certainly if there's questions, happy to answer from the audience.
All right, Tamara, I know you've been fielding the questions. So do you wanna hammer them at us?
Sure.
Do this rapid fire?
All right, first question, super quick. What about COVID?
COVID, great question. So we had to pivot to an all virtual format this year. All of our stuff was done virtually. I would say it did as close as it could, but of course cannot replace the in-person connection that we have. It is our full expectation and hope that vaccines will be widely available by the summer so that people would be able to travel to the in-person events in late September and in November. So if the world blows up between now and then, we of course can pivot and go virtual again. We know how to do that, but it is our hope and our expectation that that we'll be able to travel by September and November. And I think there is something to be had for being in person. And when we do come in person, it'll be as safe as possible. We'll do all recommended guidelines.
Great. If one currently has a board role, are they still eligible for the program?
Absolutely. So if you have only one board role and are looking for additional roles and you feel like you need something to really help accelerate and fuel additional board roles, I would encourage you to apply. The program is sort of designed to help get people onto first-time board roles, but we absolutely have had people in the program who have come in with prior board experience.
The next group of questions focus on the application process and those who should apply. What level should one be in their career to be considered for acceptance, and what are boards expecting? Are they expecting directors, senior directors, VP?
Sure. So I think Chris and I sort of covered that in the last 20 minutes or so, but just to sort of summarize, I think people need to be, they don't have to be the CEO, but they should be at the top functional level of their organization or reporting directly to the CEO. I would say we've had some very successful VPs in the program, but more likely than not, people are in the SVP or C-suite. But what's more important than title perhaps is just, being the top functional expert. And again, it's not knocking the directors or people at a lower level. It's just, boards are expecting a certain level, and it is much harder for someone who is a director level to get a board role.
If you were to apply one year and not be accepted, can you apply in another year?
Absolutely. We have people every year who apply the next year if they don't make it. We have to make really tough choices. And I will say that every year the process has gotten more and more competitive though. So if you have changed and your title has now changed, you've taken on a lot more responsibility, you've gone through an M&A, there's been something that has happened that would make you more attractive to a board, absolutely, please do apply again. But I will say it does get, slightly more competitive every year. We've seen the applications just get stronger and stronger.
Okay, this sort of tags on to that previous question. If I apply and I'm not accepted into the program, do I receive enough information that I can decide whether it's worthwhile to apply next year?
No, unfortunately, we do not provide feedback. We don't tell you where you, we don't tell you you were number 22 or,
Right.
Out of 80. We just can't because of the selection criteria process. If you really don't know, I mean, you should be able to talk to your mentors, your peers, and get a realistic expectation about whether you're ready for board service, and look at the people who made it in the program too. If you think your application's as strong as the 20 that made it in, then I would say, it's probably a safe bet to apply again.
How long is a typical search process? Assume chairman, CEO, and many of the board of director members need to meet, business diligence, committee membership needs. Is this a 3 to 4 month selection process?
It's
Chris, I'll field that one to you.
Longer than we like. Yeah, it's a long process. Sometimes it takes 6 months to get appointed, and some of that is scheduling. You've got a lot of different people in the mix. Boards have to come together for their board meetings. They don't always have ad hoc meetings to talk about candidates and process. So it could be that the decision gets pushed back to the next scheduled board meeting, unfortunately. But you are kept apprised the entire time. You know what's going on. You should expect good communication from your recruiter.
Yeah, and just to fill, we've seen, and again, all anecdotally, we've seen people get board roles in 2 weeks sometimes. And we've also seen people take 1 year from the moment they were first contacted about a board role. We've also seen it happen sometimes where people interview for a board role, they don't get it, but they made such an impression that in 6 months later, when another board role becomes available, it's a quick fill.
The next question, I'm combining 2 of them. The question is this program appropriate for a first-time CEO, first-time board member? And what about those with experiences in small businesses, VC startup, and medium-sized company?
Yes to all. Absolutely. First-time CEOs, we've had them in our program. We've had first-time board members in the program. We've had those from the venture community, from the investor community. Absolutely, yes to all.
Question 10, I'm a transgender founder that has experienced significant discrimination in the workforce after I transitioned 16 years ago. Is it realistic to even think that a corporate board would find me interesting?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry that has been your experience, which I fear is all too common of an experience. I think the tides have changed. I think last year, I mean, I wish it would have changed 20 years ago, but I think the momentum that we saw last year, I mean, for the first time ever, we are legislating underrepresented communities, which includes transgender individuals, be accepted onto boards. I mean, the tide has changed. I hope that, you never experience that again, but I would absolutely say that, it is completely realistic if you have the competencies to serve on a board that would not prohibit you from board service. Should not, anyway.
And then that last question I have, you were talking about when we had some tech issues, but could you give examples of people not ready for board roles?
Oh, yes, and I actually just got a text. I'm so sorry again that my internet went out, like the worst time ever. Hashtag 2020 is creeping into 2021. So I think someone said I had mentioned the Siberian example, right? If you live in Siberia, and you can't travel for board work, unlikely to find a board role in Siberia for you. Other examples have been people who just don't interview well, people who are super, super accomplished, but cannot interview well. That doesn't mean they shouldn't make it into the program, but it just means that they probably didn't make it into the program if they didn't interview well. I would say we've had instances where references have tanked applications, where someone gave 2 references. We called both references and they said, no way in hell would I put her on my board. She's not, she's toxic. She, doesn't support other women. She undermines the board directors. And for that's real tough, because this is somebody that the applicant is listed as a reference. So I would just encourage you to make sure that your references that you list support your board service. We've also had instances where one of, the reference was the CEO, and the CEO said, well, I would never allow her to serve on a corporate board. It's against our corporate bylaws. And I said, well, is that just if there's a conflict? And he said, no, I mean, she needs to work for me. I pay her time. I expect 100% of her time on me, and I don't support board service. And that's a tough one again, because I think in that instance we did contact the person just to let them know that they didn't have the support of their company. And some of the times we do contact applicants to let them know, but we of course have to keep references confidential. But those have been times where somebody who is otherwise qualified maybe didn't make it into the program. But that is, I would say, less than 5% of the examples. 95% of the time, people who don't make it into the program just don't have the right level of experience, or the right level of aren't in high demand based on their experience and background. So again, very small example of people that are otherwise qualified that might not make it in, but the vast majority is just they have skill sets that aren't really in high demand for boards, or they're not quite at that level of their career.
Okay. The last question we have is, when recruiters or others look for a female prospective board member, does Women in Bio have a list of women who have not taken your program?
So that's an interesting question. It's something we've discussed before. Women in Bio, though, and again, it's something we could revisit, I think. Because we have this very selective process, and we have gone through this program with women, we feel really comfortable putting the Women in Bio endorsement on these women for board roles. We haven't expanded that to people who haven't participated in Boardroom Ready, because we don't feel like we could know them well enough to recommend them for board roles. But I think that's certainly something we can consider in the future. And I will say there are a number of board databases for diverse women looking for board roles that are not affiliated with Women in Bio. Bio has a board database that you can look at getting your application, getting your material in. There are a number of databases out there for board roles where you sort of put in your stuff. Now, that being said, I have yet to see people really get board roles from that, because it's not like someone's going to go in and be like, oh, I just need a woman who is a CFO. Oh, great, she's got a board role. You typically will need to have some sort of connection, or you have to have some sort of somebody on the inside who's going to promote you, or I don't know. I just think it's a tough sell to just have these directories. You really got to have the personal connection in addition. Sorry, that was a really long and rambling answer.
That's
Well,
all
and I
right.
would just add to that, Carolyn, if people like me call you not for a board role, but for a chief commercial officer role, and you want a board position, tell us. Make sure you're being vocal. Tell the recruiter who contacts you, tell your CEO, tell your colleagues, because we can help you even if you haven't gone through the program.
Thanks, Chris. Absolutely. Keep in mind, this is, it's been a highly successful program for WIB, and we are so thankful that we have made the impact we have, but this is not your only chance to pass the board service. We have, a number of sponsors and supporters and great recruiters that want you to succeed. So don't let this discourage you if you don't make it into the program or aren't a good fit. I would say get your name out there, let people know you're interested in board service. Look at bios, board directory. Continue seeking it.
All right, just be respectful of everyone's time. We have one last question. Is the Boardroom Ready program connected to the Equilar database?
The Equilar database is a separate thing, but all of the Boardroom Ready women are automatically put into the Equilar database. So we have a number of databases like the Bio and the Equilar and the others that we sort of bulk send them all the candidates, and they populate the fields for them. So we know of them. We're not really affiliated, but we work together.
All right, that was it.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone again. I can't believe how many people attended. It's really truly exciting to see so many people are interested in corporate board service, and I know WIB is helping build a pipeline of women to fill these board roles in the coming years. And really thrilled to have your support, and really exciting to see the work that WIB is doing, especially with its D&I efforts this year. So if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to email boardroomready@womeninbio.org. And again, look for the application, and I hope many of you will apply for the program.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thanks, Chris, so much. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.